Hi, Clutter Fairy fans. This is the Clutter Fairy Weekly for August 30th, 2022. I'm your co-host, Ed Gumnick, and I'm speaking with Gail Goddard, certified professional organizer and owner of the Clutter Fairy in Houston, Texas.
Hi, everybody. The Clutter Fairy Weekly is the webcast and podcast that digs deep into the clutter that piles up between you and the life that you want to be living. We explore the habits and behaviors that lead to clutter, and we suggest strategies to slow the accumulation, reduce the collection, and comfortably manage the stuff we decide to keep.
If you're new to our Zoom meeting, we want to let you know that you can share your comments and questions via the chat feature, and I'll try to make sure Gail gets to them before we move on to another topic. You can also use the raise hand feature to let us know that you'd like to ask a question or make a comment yourself via audio or video. We're also streaming live on Facebook, so you can give us your questions and comments there, and I'll relay them to Gail. We're going to start, as we usually do, with last week's Tittle, which was called Begin the End. The assignment was to find a way to get an emotion on one of your incomplete projects. We'd love to hear from our participants in Zoom and on Facebook. Who managed to move an incomplete project forward this week? Please let us know in the comments. YouTube viewer Jerry shared her Tittle story. It's a little bit long, but it's a great story, and I don't
Totally worth it.
Don't want to leave anything out. So
yeah, we got to listen to it.
So here goes. One button. About 4 months ago, a button popped off my blouse. It's dark red. To keep from losing it, I put one square of toilet paper on my otherwise perfectly cleared off dark brown vanity and put the button on the square of white toilet paper. One sewing needle. Also about 4 months ago, I got out my sewing box, did whatever I needed to do, and put the sewing box away, only to notice that the needle I used didn't make it back into the sewing box. To keep from losing it, I put it on the magnet that sits next to my knitting chair for holding yarn needles and steel crochet hooks. While watching last week's episode for the third time, it finally occurred to me to get the blouse out of the closet, the button off the toilet paper square, and the needle off the magnet. Then I got the sewing box down, found appropriate thread and a thimble, and sewed that stupid button on. I returned the sewing box with the needle to its closet shelf, and I tossed the square of toilet paper. 5 minutes max. Question, how long will it take me to get used to not having a square of TP on the vanity or a sewing needle on my magnet?
I still, like, this is the fourth time I've heard that, and it still makes me laugh when I hear it. It just made me laugh and cheer when I read it the first time. It was just so perfect. I read it out loud to a friend of mine who also laughed about having been in the same situation herself. I'm sure everyone listening has done this, leaving that small, annoying, irritating task undone for months when it takes 5 minutes to do it. Leaving things out for months as reminders to do it instead of just stopping what you're doing and making it just stupid thing happen. Doing it now. We all recognize ourselves there. I know you do. I love that it took listening to the episode 3 times to make the realization click in, and that the answer to your question about how long to get used to the cleared spaces, I'm guessing that's going to be immediately, because you've created negative space. So now the space has no noise about it, and it's going to quiet down right away in your mind. You'll have to bring it up as memory to cheer for yourself again. This is a perfect example of something to put on the completion list, lest you forget what great thing you got accomplished. Like, it's just a stupid button, but we can all cheer in our heads and say, yay! Like, it was that little grit of sandpaper that was in 3 different places in your house that was like sanding on your skin for months until you finally picked it up and did it. And what a relief to have it complete. Cheers. You are the symbol of all 5-minute tasks getting to completion.
And now Jerry can do a little happy dance every time she wears that blouse or sees the other member of her household wearing that blouse. She didn't indicate whether it was hers or someone else's, but
yeah.
Connie reports, I did 2/3 of a project, sorting through my recipes, the cutouts, which I have collected for 2 decades, culled 3/4 thus far.
Yay, that's good progress. That's very good progress. And with recipes, and it's all individual pieces of paper, or it's different, pages in a book or whatever, you've filtered it down in a bite-sized chunk, I'm sure. You probably couldn't do it all in one sitting. So the fact that you got 2/3 done, excellent. Good progress.
Ginger says, I cleared another bin from my stack in the bedroom. 3 more to go.
Yay, 1 bin down, 3 more to go. Good job.
And Anya says, I decluttered an entrance wardrobe that didn't work for me and my DH. We love the new one. And
awesome.
And I helped my DH find a new shelf to replace a chest of drawers he didn't use. I am so happy he loves it.
Yay. And so that sounds like 2 pieces of furniture went out. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's a big blank footprint where there used to be stuff. Excellent job.
Marcy shared, I leave things quite often because it rarely ever takes the short time because there's so often a complication. It is so frustrating. I think did we talk about that last week as a source of incompletions, that the
roadblocks?
Because you budgeted a certain amount of time, or maybe you didn't budget a certain amount of time, and so that's one source of a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Or you budgeted X amount of time, but the complication made it X plus 30 minutes to complete the thing. Right.
And there is some time management involved. If you realize you get into it and you realize, okay, I have 4 other things to do today, and this didn't turn out to be the short project that I thought it was. And so really all you've done is you've moved the project a little bit farther along and reached the next roadblock. And you have to go, okay, in order to manage my time correctly today, I need to stop doing this, put it back up on the incomplete shelf, and go do the other things that I had planned to do today, and work it back in for another, advancement later, and call it a win that you put it, the hour that you expected to be on it, or the 30 minutes that you expected to be on it, you put that time in to figure out what was necessary next and work out your next step. So it isn't that the time is wasted. It's just that you don't get to, jump to completion as soon as you thought. Yeah, it happens.
M said, I took out 2 bags of paper from an unfinished sorting project.
Oh, good.
2 bags is good progress. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot of paper.
Cassandra shared, I did a reset in my now decluttered kitchen Sunday night. It was driving me crazy.
Oh, good for you. So you have a decluttered kitchen and you went and reset it for the next day. Good job.
Dawn said, I did, excuse me, I did 2 things. I put the button back on a raincoat, also strengthening one getting loose. I also sewed up the bottom of a pillow, only 5.5 inches opening. I redid probably 6 years ago. Now they're both done. 35 minutes total. Which made me think 2 things. Just do it.
Yeah.
And I feel so complete and at peace having accomplished it.
Right. Isn't that wonderful?
Also, I became aware that there are daily unfinished above, as well as creative, which I discovered can tend to be in the back of my mind, somewhat disagreeing with last week of the waitresses. She's talking about the research into how incomplete things tend to stay on our minds, and which is an advantage to keeping them present until we have too darn many of them.
And then it's just too much noise, right?
Yeah.
And it also reminded me, all these conversations about mending and sewing on buttons and things. Someone commented on the last week's show that she liked to do mending, she liked to do sewing. And so you should find a friend that likes to do mending and trade with your sewing friend, so that the sewing friend will sit and do mending in front of the television and do your mending for you. And you can cook for them, or, just trade out some other chore for them to get your mending done. If it makes you crazy and you never do it and you still want it done, go through your friends and find who likes to do mending and then create a trade, was her suggestion, which I thought was awesome. Sorry, I didn't capture your name when I read the comment.
Connie says, this week I decided to reduce the volume of my storage closet, and yesterday I got rid of 10 boxes as well as an entire trash bag of old beauty and skincare items.
Yay.
In one day, I managed to diminish the density of my storage closet by 1/3. I feel inspired to keep going and get the job done. Thank you, Clutter Fairy.
Yay. That was a big start. That's 10 boxes is a lot, right? Good job. And we can't wait to hear when you get it done. That's exciting.
P.S. Today is my birthday, and of course, I'm spending it with you all. Happy birthday, Connie.
Happy birthday.
We will spare you the singing of happy birthday only in the interest of time.
Right.
Okay, we should probably get on with our main topic because we have a good bit to talk about. And the topic today is digital clutter. Digital clutter is a paradox. It takes up virtually no space, but can disrupt our lives as profoundly as physical stuff. Excessive and disorganized emails, voicemails, digital photos, videos, music, and other electronic files can raise our stress levels, waste our time, lower our productivity, and even damage the environment. We'll talk about that later on. Today, we're going to explore sources of digital clutter and offer strategies for getting it under control. I should say we're going to explore certain sources of digital clutter and strategies to get it under control. We got enough responses to particular types of digital clutter that we really think we're going to need to talk about this again. We're not going to do that next week. We're probably going to put the second one off a few weeks. But today we're going to talk about the things that ranked highest on our survey. So go ahead, Gail.
Okay, so the results of the survey, 90% of the respondents, almost 90% of the respondents reported that they suffer from digital clutter. We weren't surprised by that at all. We weren't too astonished to learn that the number 1 and number 2 digital clutter problems that our audience experiences are 1, too many emails at 81%, and number 2, poorly organized email at 59%. In answer to our just for fun question about the oldest email message in your inbox, a grand total of 1 respondent reported having an empty inbox. Congratulations, Kathy Ann, on your achievement that most of us only dream about. You win the prize. To that same question, many people gave answers in the far distant past. I'm not sure that we asked the question clearly enough because we were thinking specifically of the email inbox, not messages in saved folders.
Yeah, several people mentioned, I have an email from my deceased mom from 20 years ago, and that's presumably in a folder of, treasured emails to keep forever.
Yeah, mom.
Not loose in your email.
Everybody has old ones. Yeah, we all have definitely really old ones in there somewhere, right?
The oldest real date, people mentioned, they'd gotten an email from a T-Rex, and someone else said, my oldest email is probably has a BC date on it. But the oldest real reported date was 1993, and that's pretty impressive.
That's pretty impressive that they still have access to it is what's really rare, because it's probably gone through several computers at this point.
I should think so.
That's amazing. Okay, so the third most common problem that our audience reported was downloaded files at 56%. Everybody has that downloaded file folder that they ignore. And the fourth ranking response was personal electronic documents at 51%. We found it curious that work-related electronic docs came in much lower at only 16%. And this ratio reminds me of the parallel situation in which clients report having no trouble keeping their work office tidy, but their home office is a mess because usually the work office environment is so much smaller than what you're having to manage at home. And I don't think that parallel exists exactly in work email.
No, but I think the external pressure, the fact that, there's accountability to someone else.
Constant accountability to someone else. Yeah.
There are deadline, time and date deadlines to meet, and sometimes legal reporting requirements. I have to keep these things and file them in such a way. So we get lots of pressure to organize our work stuff.
There's a lot
less
more
pressure.
parameters around, that require
Yeah.
you to do on the work stuff. So, yeah. Okay, so before we talk about how to take on the digital clutter, we want to remind you of the Clutter Fairy's definition of clutter, which is anything that stands in the way of the life that you want. So if you have 30,000 email messages in your inbox, thank God I do not. I can't even imagine that. But it never causes you any problems, then we're not going to pressure you to strive for the inbox zero goal or any other arbitrary goal that's too much for you to manage. But there are potential costs for having too many messages or too many files or disorganized storage and other forms of digital clutter. And here are a few. It is going to be hard to find what you need when you need it. So you waste time and lose productivity when you have 30,000 emails to search through, depending on what level of sorting you've already done and what kind of file structure you've already got. It may make your searching process more difficult if you've got that much stored.
I wish you'd stop using the 30,000 emails because I feel attacked.
Do you feel, poked right now? Is that what you're saying? Okay, you can confess to that later.
We're going to get to
that. You may also spend too much time trying to manage the situation, constantly trying to create the folders, move stuff around, get it into your structure. When you have that many emails, you spend more time managing it. Too much stuff can fill up your devices and slow them down. So in terms of functionality of the computer, the denser it gets, the harder it is for the programs to run, for the computer to run. So you're making it hard to do other tasks that you need the computer for if you're slowing it down with density.
We should say we're talking not just about computers, but in fact, the top response on the survey to what devices you use, the leader was actually smartphones at about 76%, followed by laptops at 70, and desktop computers at actually tablets at 40%, desktop computers at about 30%.
Right.
And people reported that where they spent the most time was smartphones at 40%, laptops 31%, followed by tablets at 15 and desktop computers at 10. So we're not just talking about computers, we're talking about, all of those
happy devices that you keep digital files in, right?
Can get filled up and slowed down and bogged down.
Yeah, and phones are getting better about that, but in the beginning in particular, they were very susceptible to, okay, we only have this much storage and now there's so much in there and there's so many programs and we're just completely shutting the phone down. So I think the phone cries uncle earlier than the computers do.
Yeah.
Although that's gotten better over time. Like any other form of clutter, digital stuff leads to stress and anxiety, feelings of overwhelm. This is, it translates to the digital environment, the same feelings that you have at home around your storage and your stuff in your house translates to the digital stuff on your phone. There's even an environmental price for saving too much digital content. The power to run the servers that are storing all of our data is expected to make up about 8% of carbon emissions by 2025. So almost a tenth of the carbon emissions are coming from storing digital content, which is, it's fascinating to me how much digital content we managed to generate since they came up with the computer. And here we are drowning in our digital stuff. So let's talk about solutions. And first, we need to give you a disclaimer for today. We're not going to take the time to dig deep into the particulars of all the operating systems or applications or individual types of devices. So we have to stick to general themes and strategies, or we will just drown in not enough time to cover it. So we're going to talk in general ideas. And Ed is going to share screens occasionally and talk to you about it. So if you're listening in a podcast, sorry if we go off and start talking about a screen that you can't see. Hopefully we'll still be discussing it in general terms and you'll be able to follow.
Yeah,
we'll do our best, right?
We'll describe everything we're doing as thoroughly as we can as we're doing it. Yeah.
So let's talk about a few principles for managing digital clutter that can apply to several different types of content. Remember that any form of digital content that you receive or create or capture on a frequent basis is really two projects. One is the backlog that you've already accumulated, the 30,000 emails.
Right.
And number two is the stuff that you'll receive today and tomorrow and the next day. And just like a backlog of paper mail or clean laundry, you'll need a plan to tackle the project that is the backlog, as well as cultivating a habit to stem the daily tide and to keep the backlog from getting bigger. So we'll talk about more about this as we get into specific examples. Consider a principle we've talked about several times in the realm of filing actual paper, which we call bigger buckets. The idea of bigger buckets is to make your filing or storage system no more complicated and fine-grained than you really need it to be. For example, instead of sorting your photos into folders or albums called Aunt Agnes, Grandma, and Uncle Pete, you could perhaps drop photos of all of the people in that category into one album or folder called Extended Family. And of course, if you're a photograph person and you have hundreds of photos of Aunt Agnes, you may need something more granular than that. But keep the bigger bucket principle in mind to avoid making your system unnecessarily complicated. I do walk people back from overly complicated systems a lot. I think if you feel like you don't have control over it, you want to make a very complicated system to feel like you have better control, but then it makes it too hard to keep up with. And so we want to aim for what's the shortest, fastest way for you to process this stuff and deal with it and keep it manageable without having to burn a huge amount of time. So bigger buckets works, and it works in the digital environment just like it works with your physical paper. You want to budget some time to get to know your device's sorting, searching, and automation functions, and ask for help if you need it there. We don't all understand these devices very well. And if you're struggling to understand how it functions, just better to go to somebody that knows what they're doing so that you can ask questions and they can get you there immediately instead of you floundering around and getting more frustrated as you go. Budgeting some time to see what you understand and see what you need help with from somebody that really understands is worth the effort. When in doubt, prioritize the files by file size. Nearly all electronic devices offer the feature of sorting any set of digital resources by file size. If you concentrate on eliminating the largest files, you can score quick wins and buy yourself disk space and time for breathing room.
Okay, now we're going to talk about some nuts and bolts, and we're going to talk about email specifically. And so I am going to actually share my email inbox, and I'm going to make the disclaimer right up front to say my laptop crashed in November 2020, and I've never completely recovered from that. I got a new laptop and I recovered as much as I could, and I had to recover a couple of different ways. And my email is a hot mess. But I thought that would make it a good demonstration. And I've done a little pre-cleaning yesterday to try to avoid, any nasty spam, because, some of the spam is pretty nasty. And I will just apologize. We'll edit out anything horrendous that might show up in my email, but it's probably not too bad. So I'm going to share my screen just for that purpose. Okay, so we're looking at my email inbox, and yeah, there are 28,629 items. I confess.
Gotta love it.
Yeah. So the first thing I want to talk about is on the theme of bigger buckets. So if you're facing an email inbox like this and you want to try to get it under control fairly fast, the first thing to do is throw a whole bunch of stuff in one big bucket. So for example, there's no reasonable likelihood that anything in my email inbox older than 6 months old requires any urgent action. So I'm going to go down here to where I save stuff, and I'm going to create a new folder that I'm going to call old emails to sort, and I'm going to put today's date on it so that I can remember. And there it goes right there. And then I'm going to go back to my inbox. And so I'm going to go back 6 months. So I'm going to go back to, we'll say, the end of February, everything from February back. And you see that many of these emails are more recent than that. I have a lot of work to do. Wait, there we go.
You're going to have to grab and slide.
Yeah, I have to grab it. Yeah. So February, we're going to take everything. Oops, there we go.
He's trying to find February 28th for you
Right.
on the podcast.
Yeah. Sorry, I could be sloppy and start somewhere in the middle of the day, but I'm not like that. So I'm taking everything from there down to there, and then move it to old emails to sort.
Look at that. He's moving 21,000 items into the old sort project.
And yeah, and like I said, a lot of that stuff is, it's duplicates. It's things I'd already sorted that came over when I restored my computer. So I don't really have 28,000 emails that need attention. A lot of these emails already had attention. And so we'll have already reduced the problem from 28,000 to maybe about 8,000.
Yeah, maybe 7,000.
Like yeah. Oh, even lower than that.
Yeah, 7,500. That's great. And somebody said here, Emily Sue says, one of my email accounts I call my trash email because everything advertising or soliciting goes in there. I will need to unsubscribe from many of these regular emails that I get. But having it go to a trash email means that everything into that email address is not something that needs immediate attention or isn't the fire drill because it's all ad.
Right. Okay, so that got me down to 7,158 emails. So that's good. So the next thing we want to do is deal with what we call low-hanging fruit. And so just right where I landed, I'm going to take a look, and I see Artisan Coffee Company. This is a vendor that I bought coffee from one time. And so of course they have sent me 1,000 emails. You can see actually they're duplicates in here. And I'm just going to delete those because I know where to find them if I want to buy coffee again. I do not need to see sales that they were offering a month ago.
Because they're pretty much not going to honor it, right? Like that's going to be the end of that.
And there's some junk, as you see. Want to meet singles, click here. That can go. So when we say low-hanging fruit is things, long lists. And some of these this is banking, so I'm going to handle that separately. But I could go, this is stuff that I know to be junk here. I'm not going to do a whole lot of examples of this, but you get the idea. This is, some political things that I haven't had a chance to read. I also want to talk about time sensitivity. I'm looking at emails from a mailing list called BookBub. They send recommendations and weekly discounts, and I know that the discounts expire
by the week, right?
Timely basis. Yeah. So here are all the emails from BookBub, and I know that anything older than about the middle of August is going to have expired bargains. And the truth is, there are so many mailing lists for people who love books that I'm really not worried that I'm ever going to run out of good book recommendations. So I read these when I get a chance to read them, and I throw them away willy-nilly when I need to clean up fast.
And here's a pertinent question that goes with what you're doing there. Let's do bread and butter. So Vivian in Calgary says, how do you move more than one item at a time?
Oh, and well, I'm in Outlook for the Mac, and you can click the first one and then scroll down and shift click to the last one you want to take.
Which highlights everything.
So all of those are selected, and I'm just hitting the delete button on my laptop. And actually, I could have gotten rid of all the rest of these too. That one's in order, so I'm going to save that to. I'm going to actually save that because that's probably a receipt. Oh, these are all receipts. I can mark them as red and move them to transactions. So that's all I want to do. All I want to do on that. I also want to talk about low interest stuff. Like you will find. Let's see. Don't want to look at those. I don't want to deal with bank stuff, but political stuff. I'm interested in it, but if it piles up.
It's dated material immediately.
Day after day after day. And yeah, there's a timeliness to it. And I'm looking at another one here, CD Baby. They're a subscription I maintain for a client. And I get about one email from them a year that is a payment receipt, and everything else is them trying to sell me more services. Yeah. So easy to go. This is a newsletter I really enjoy and hardly ever get around to. This one here, Center for Inquiry. So I'm going to just go get rid of a whole bunch of them. And so there, with some low-hanging fruit, I've gotten rid of another 200 messages.
You're under 7,000 now.
Yeah. We also wanted to talk about, the idea of batch processing your email versus checking it continuously. So I actually have set my email so that it never makes a noise to tell me there's a new email message. And I say to people all the time, there are no graphic design emergencies. I mean, sometimes clients think it's an emergency, and yeah, there are time sensitive situations, like if a project is being printed and a printer is waiting for my approval and their pressman is standing by, that's time sensitive. And 99 times out of 100, they will call me to tell me that. They won't send me an email. Mm-hmm. So in reality, I could get away with checking email twice a day without creating any great hardship for any of my clients. And
because the fire drill would prompt them to contact you with more urgency some other way.
Okay, so let's talk about the processing that you do. So I'm going to go back to sorting this on date received, and I'm just going to go back to a recent day that doesn't have too much stuff. I'm going to pick Sunday because I think there's some examples here that we can talk about, and I'm going to open up all of the stuff from that day. So this is what I would suggest, cultivating as a daily or maybe twice a day habit if you need to do it that often. Cultivate the habit of just opening a chunk of messages and going through them and using what we've talked about before, this sort of David Allen getting things done principle, which is if it's something if it needs an action you can do in less than 2 minutes, do it. Otherwise, mark it for action or file it where it needs to go. The idea here is, open and look at your emails as few times as possible. So here, once again, we've got, this is someone trying to sell me their latest books, and I don't have time to deal with it today. And so I'm just going to let it go because there will always be more, and I can go to their website if I want to know. This is Adobe trying to sell me something. I'm going to delete that.
You're at the bottom.
What'd you say?
Are you working on the ones at the bottom?
You're not seeing the individual messages. You know what? I can't do that without sharing everything. So let's not do. We just won't do that because that's a little too complicated. But the idea was to open everything from a certain period and then just process through it. Give it less than 2 minutes per message to decide, is this something that requires action, in which case you can put it on your to-do list or into the software that you use to manage your tasks. Or maybe you have a folder here that is messages that need action or response.
Well, or maybe you have a paper to-do list that you're writing to-do items down on.
Right. Yeah.
And you make a note, here's this thing I got to do. And it's in an email from such and such a date. And if that's how you manage your to-do stuff as well.
Yeah. And the key things I think to remember as you're going through your daily or twice daily routine of processing a chunk of mail is, do not be afraid to unsubscribe. That's the first thing.
Right. It's
really easy to sign up for email newsletters. And, in fact, there's so many websites where they make signing up for their email a condition of something you want to read or something you want to download. Don't be embarrassed to unsubscribe. It's not your fault they hooked you into it.
Well, and that that it's actively their email list building. They're trying to, it's part of their marketing strategy to back you into a corner with, you want this piece of information, then you got to give us your email. Like, they're doing it on purpose to build their own email list, and which is fine. And you can go, okay, give me the piece of paper, and now I'm unsubscribing. Like, otherwise, I don't care what you have to say, go away.
So I want to talk about rules. I don't want to get deep into how rules work, but just about every freestanding email application available out there has something like rules. Outlook calls this feature rules, and it means you can set up an instruction that says, anytime a message comes from this sender, or anytime a message contains this word in the subject line, take these further actions. So one example I have is, I have a folder called author resources, and I receive several newsletters for writers that get routed automatically into this folder. And this is another case where, none of this is ever a burning priority. So that's why I can safely route it into a folder where it's not going to get daily attention.
Because it's sort of like author magazines that they're sending you.
Yeah.
What
I'm frequently looking for in these is contests and submission deadlines and things like that. And that stuff is almost always out of date if you look at an email older than a month ago. So I'm just going to, this has accumulated 59 messages, and I'm just going to go right in here and delete everything older than a month ago. And similarly, this book newsletter, this is where I've routed most of the emails I get from people trying to sell me books. And the reality here is I'm subscribed to too many. And so I'm going to go to one that I never look at, or I've never really enjoyed very much. And I'm just going to unsubscribe, because I want to make this problem less bad.
Well, and so I can't see anything that you're doing right now.
Right.
But I know that you're doing it.
Yeah, I'm afraid. Yeah, I can't demonstrate.
And that's okay. That. Now it's gone, and now you're not going to get that one anymore, and that's awesome.
And then this is another case where I'm never going to have time to read more than a week's worth of these things before another week comes. And so I'm just going to get rid of everything in here that's older than this week. And I am not too worried that I will.
It goes back to April, and it's already moved over to book newsletters.
Right.
So you already know it's okay.
So I know it's safe. That's all that's in there. Let's see. What else do we want to talk about?
We talked about routing action items to a folder. We talked about setting up a rule under whatever rule system your email has, and unsubscribing. So that's good.
Yeah. And I have a whole complicated structure, and I have to say, I think my structure of saved files is probably far more granular than it needs to be. So for example, I have I have a folder for each client for whom I have a reasonable amount.
And I have the same thing about client emails as well. And I make a distinction between active clients and I have an inactive client folder. So when I'm working on a job and it's happening, then they're an active client. But when that job quiets down and we're not, whatever project got finished or I'm not working with that person in the moment, then I move them into inactive so that the client folder list isn't super long on my screen. It's always only the 10 or 15 people that I'm actively interacting with on email in the moment. And it makes it, I can still find those inactive people. If they come back to me and start another project, I can move them back out of inactive. But that's an example of they don't need to be in they don't need to have their own bucket up front. If I can put them in inactive and make that a big bucket of, I'm not working with all of these people and they can go in here.
Let's mention one other feature, which is, in just about any email application, well, I think every email application will have some kind of a search function. And in Outlook, there's a sort of quick search that you can do where you type in the little search box at the top right, and that gets you one thing. But there's also an advanced search here. And in advanced search, I can specify that I want things where the subject includes the word free. Well, that's nearly always going to be someone,
an advertisement,
someone advertising something. And so I can, I can't go through these quite as quickly. There may be some I want to save, like Domino's is reminding that I have points toward a free pizza. And so I might want to save that one to look at later.
The free pizza, that's too important.
Yeah. But a lot of these, look, and there are more things about free Domino's pizza. So I'm only going to save one of those, obviously.
Right.
But yeah, a lot of these things on free can go. And Deborah mentioned that. She said, I type in the subject's commercial email. I select all the emails, put in the trash, and delete. In recent years, I've actually set up a rule where if the words Black Friday or what's the other one they do? Cyber Monday.
Cyber Monday. Uh-huh.
If those words are in the subject line of your email, I am not interested in your email,
because you're not shopping on Black Friday. Is that what you're saying?
Right. So take advantage of the search feature as a way to clear some stuff quickly.
Tammy has a question. She says, how do you decide folder titles?
Honestly, it's just about making them memorable for you.
And remembering that they sort alphabetically, basically.
Yeah, they sort alphabetically with punctuation. I think it ignores leading spaces. I can't remember. That may not be true. Let's see if Outlook will let me. If I change the name and put a space in front, yeah. See, it ignores the leading space, but it alphabetizes.
It sees the hyphen.
A hyphen ahead of letters, and then letters in order.
Oh, it's someone's saying, tell Ed to be careful with what he's sharing.
Oh, well, I hope there's nothing too terrible.
He's been trying to, he was trying to kill the salacious things that were.
Yeah.
The salacious spam. Sorry if there's too much. There's also it's a lot of your business. So you're like, showing your emails and your client lists and stuff. So that's okay. We're back off of that.
Yeah. Connie says, I think the problem with organizing things on computer has to do with there are so many more important things I have to do, and this is not bugging me. So it loses in rank of things to do. Yes, I feel Connie's pain on that. Right. Several people said things along those lines that it's a low priority because it's very easy not to see it. You just,
it's all still in the computer, right?
Turn it off, close the lid, shut down the computer.
And this is where I think that you can make headway and not have to worry. Like if inbox 0 isn't your ultimate target, then you can go in, sort by date, dump the ads. Like you can try to just pull the volume down a little bit without worrying too much about, did I get all the way to 0 or who cares? Like just spend 15 minutes and go dump a bunch of bulk I sort by sender and then dump all those ads or dump all the magazines you're not looking at or dump all the blog posts that you don't care about. I get Facebook notifications and email all the time, and it's super easy for me to go sort by sender, and then everything that came from Facebook gone. And that takes out, because they send a huge volume of, hey, did you see in Facebook that somebody posted the XYZ? And I do occasionally want to see those things go by an email because I see something that I want to make sure to go look at later. But mostly, other than in the moment, it's dead news to me. So I can go and dump a huge amount and thin my volume down quickly just by spending 5 minutes sorting by sender and then dumping a sender that I'm thinking about. All of Facebook can go, all of the fill in the blank can go. And let that be your goal, that you give it 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes once a week to just thin the herd and not be trying to aim for, I got 100% complete here. And that way you can put a little bit of attention to it, and you can keep it from growing to the 30,000 number.
Right.
and still be putting attention to it and not be taking your attention away from other things that seem more important.
Joyce asked, doesn't that eat up hard drive space until you get around to it, Ed? And I think she's probably talking about the bulk solution. And yes, it does.
But they're already in there, right? Like it's already part of
right. Yeah. So it's more a matter of, I'm putting off reclaiming that space. Email messages themselves take up very little room because they are text formats. Even HTML email has fairly light coding on it, so they're not big files. One thing you could do, if you are files, if hard drive space is really at a premium, one thing you could do is look at attachments and go, let me share that share Outlook again. And I don't know that there will be any attachments in that stuff we set aside, but we'll go back here. We'll go to the stuff I set aside, and I can click on the attachment symbol here on the header bar, and it shows me emails that have attachments, and these are people I do not know, so I don't even want to take the chance of opening them to see what they are. I'll do that later on. But yeah, I would start by going through this group at the top that have files attached, because email that has files attached is much larger than plain email. Mm-hmm. And so these are all from a client, and I would go through those, confirm that I've saved the files they sent me somewhere else, and then you can actually delete the attachment and keep the email if you're really concerned about hard drive space. On the subject of, I want to talk just a little more about bigger buckets. Depending on your particular work style, how the work you do is structured, you might be able to just save emails by the week instead of by the client. Just like take everything work related or a month, take everything work related and dump it into the August 2022 folder to make life easy on yourself, because any project you worked on, you can probably go back later and if you need something, you'll be able to say, yeah, I finished that project in August, so the thing I'm looking for will be in July or August. So you don't have a ton of stuff to sort through.
And it's easy to just select everything from July and stick it in a July folder.
We're running out of time. We're not going to get to any of our other topics, but we will return. We will return to this subject.
It is the nature of digital conversation, right?
Yeah, it grows and grows and grows. And probably by the time we are ready to do the second episode, they'll have invented new forms of content that we'll have to cover in the third and fourth episodes.
All right. Well, so that ended up being a discussion about digital email and managing email a little bit. And when we had a little bit more to do, and we'll have to pick it up another time.
Let's talk about next week, actually.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
We are going to return to a topic we covered before. Designing a personal philosophy of decluttering is the inspiration for our next several weeks of webcasts. We're going to revisit a series of topics from a few years back that we called a decluttering philosophy, changing our relationship to stuff. We're going to examine our relationships with stuff in terms of positive and negative emotions, habits, behaviors, and ethical and social questions. We'll examine these factors in our relationships with stuff, and we'll talk about practical approaches to bring our spaces into better alignment with who we are and the lives we want to be living. Join us next week, September 6th at noon US Central Time for You and Your Stuff, Crafting a Philosophy of Decluttering.
The first in a series.
Yes, first in a series. Let's talk about the Tittle.
Okay, so this week's Tittle is big buckets and low-hanging fruit. This week's assignment is to make headway in cleaning up your digital clutter. You won't get it all done in one sitting, but let's aim for one work session to reduce the volume of unprocessed digital data. And specifically, we're going to talk about email right now. To help with your volume of unopened email, let's separate the old stuff from the more current messages. So pick a date, the 1 year back, 6 months back, before which you can say with reasonable certainty that there's nothing that's likely to require critical action. So just like Ed took his 21,000 emails and moved them over from 6 months back, 6 months and then older. Pick your date that you think, okay, now all of the fire drills have gone by beyond this date, and I can move everything out of the way and create a folder that says this stuff needs sorting, this email needs sorting before XYZ date, and then sort your inbox by the date received and move everything before your cutoff date, your selected cutoff date, to the new folder. And this is a step that's creating the separate backlog project that will need your attention later, as opposed to what's sort of currently happening in your inbox. Then for the more current items that remain in the inbox, you want to aim for eliminating low-hanging fruit. So sort the email by sender, and that's going to show you the single senders that have a high volume of email, like he was showing you. Here's the sales ads from this company, here's the newsletters from this company, and so on. And you can delete whole chunks of email in one go. In my inbox, it's the Container Store ads. The Container Store sends out a whole bunch of ads, and I hardly ever have time to look at them. And I still want to be able to see occasionally when they have new products and stuff, but 9 times out of 10, I'm not spending a lot of time with the Container Store ads. So I can sort and get rid of everything beyond a week and be perfectly happy. So that's something that you can do in your current items still, is sort by the sender and dump out low-hanging fruit. And that is Cookie's commentary on the subject.
There you go.
Then go and do the other step that he showed you. Concentrate on one day. So sort the emails back by date received again, and look at the oldest date in the last 2 weeks or the last week or whatever time period you consider the recent past that you haven't cleared away. You haven't cleared all of those that date's email out of your inbox. And spend a moment opening all those messages from that day and go through them to see whether they actually require action or not, if you can delete them, or if you need to put something on your to-do list, flag it with some kind of, if it's time sensitive, do you need to put a deadline on it, and that kinds of thing. Is it something that you need to save related to a client? You need to move it into another folder. So go through for that one day, and there's probably somewhere between 2 and 20 emails for that day that you need to look at, and deal with them all. Deal with that collection for that day, and clear out one day at a time. So but we want you, just for this Tittle, we just want you to concentrate on one day. And then for those of you for whom email isn't a pressing problem, there was a very small percentage of the people that said, yeah, we don't really have a problem with email. More power to you. And so these Tittle steps that we put out don't really make sense to you. So instead, you can go look at your downloads folder instead. Look at those downloaded files to see which ones are ready to be deleted. It's likely that you downloaded it in the moment, and in order to do something with it, you probably already saved it somewhere else, or you completed the task around which the reason why you downloaded the file, you've done what you needed to do with it. And so most of those downloads should be pretty easy to delete. And in the process of I download the file and then in order to go take some action and do something. And so you get distracted from going back and deleting it in the moment. So take a moment now, go into that downloads folder and do some deleting. And that's another place where you're downloading large files. A lot of times photos, big documents. And so that's a great way if you delete
software
them.
installers, sometimes
Yeah,
software
that kind of
installers,
stuff. Eat up space.
Great, big, huge ones.
It's a great way to reduce the volume of what's on your hard drive as well.
I do want to answer one more question from the chat. Emily Sue said, do you actually need to sort through that old collection of bulk emails? And that's, everyone's going to have a little bit different answer to this according to your level of confidence about confidence about how well you've sorted through things. Yeah. Worry about missing things. In my case, like the stuff I threw in the old folder, the only thing I will really scan that for is receipts and client communications, because there are a lot of things for which I only receive electronic receipts nowadays. And so I want to save all of those for tax and financial accounting purposes. And then client communications, just in case I need to figure out, how something unfolded in, what our conversation was about a project. Other than that, that stuff that's older than 6 months will all go.
And I think instead of trying to delete out of that folder, you will go scanning through it, looking to grab things and move them.
Yeah.
File them or whatever. And then ultimately, when you get to the bottom of your scanning, you've now looked at everything and you can delete the whole folder at once.
Yeah, that's probably true. Yeah. And we talked about, 2 projects, the backlog and the current. And by dropping all that stuff in a folder, I've really broken mine into 3 projects. There's the stuff older than 6 months, the stuff newer than 6 months, but not very recent. And then the recent stuff that I want to be on top of day by day.
Yeah. The last couple of days. Important stuff. Yeah.
Okay. Several people expressed concern about my, sharing stuff on the screen. We're going to be careful in the editing to make sure, nothing private or that, shouldn't be out there is out there. So thank you for that. And that's about it. If you're watching this on YouTube, we would love for you to join us live. To get notifications about upcoming events, we invite you to join the meetup group by visiting cfhou.com/meetup. You can also follow us on Facebook by visiting cfhou.com/Facebook, or join our mailing list by visiting cfhou.com/subscribe. We love to hear from you, so please keep those questions, comments, and topic suggestions coming on YouTube, Facebook, or anywhere that you find us. You can always reach us through our website at clutterfairyhouston.com.
Thanks, everybody, for coming. Clearly, we are not the digital experts of the universe. We're doing our best, and we will come back to talk about other things, other pieces that we didn't get to cover at another time. And, you can always ask questions on the YouTube video. Once we post it, you can go into the comments and ask questions there. So we'll do our best.
We know people in Houston who could come and help you with this stuff hands-on. People you could hire if you want to hire somebody to help you get your Macintosh devices.
Yes.
I don't know a good Windows expert these days, or an Android phone expert, but we know some Mac people.
Oh, Karen could do it. We can refer to Karen.
There you go. All right. Thank you so much.
All right. See you guys next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.